Hello and welcome to the English Talk community. I am Julia, and today we are going to talk about something I know is close to your heart: how to speak English with confidence in just 21 days. Have you ever felt that nervous feeling in your stomach when you need to speak English? Or have you ever avoided situations where you would need to use the language? If you answered yes, know that you are not alone, and today I am going to show you exactly how to change this reality. Before we start, leave your like if you really want to transform your confidence in English. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done it yet, because we have an incredible community of people like you. And activate the notification bell so you do not miss any tip that could be the turning point in your English journey. You know, I have been teaching English for years, and I have seen thousands of people struggling with the same fear you might be feeling right now. They know the words, they understand when others speak, but when it comes to opening their mouth and actually speaking, something blocks them. This is completely normal, and it happens to everyone who learns a new language. The beautiful thing is that this fear is not permanent. It is just a wall that we can break down step by step, and that is exactly what we are going to do together in the next 21 days. I want you to think about this for a moment. 21 days from now, imagine yourself speaking English naturally, without that terrible anxiety, without overthinking every single word before you say it. Imagine participating in conversations, expressing your ideas clearly, and feeling proud of your progress. This is not a dream. This is absolutely possible, and I am going to guide you through every step of this transformation. The method I am going to share with you today has worked for thousands of students around the world, people from different countries, different ages, different backgrounds, but they all had one thing in common. They were tired of being afraid, and they decided to take action. What makes this approach different from everything else you have tried before? We are not going to focus on grammar rules. We are not going to memorize long lists of vocabulary. We are not going to do boring exercises. Instead, we are going to work directly with what really matters: your confidence. Because here is the truth that many English teachers do not tell you. Speaking English fluently is not about knowing every grammar rule perfectly. It is about feeling comfortable enough to communicate your ideas, even if you make mistakes along the way. Native speakers make mistakes too. They use simple words, they repeat themselves sometimes, and that is perfectly fine. The reason most people never overcome their fear of speaking English is because they try to be perfect from the beginning. They wait until they feel ready, until they know enough words, until they understand every grammar rule. But here is what I learned after working with thousands of students. You will never feel completely ready. The only way to become confident is to start speaking, even when you feel scared, even when you think you are not good enough yet. And the beautiful part is that in just 21 days of consistent practice, your brain will start to accept English as something normal, something natural, something you can do without fear. Right now, I want you to make a commitment with yourself. For the next few minutes, let go of all the negative thoughts about your English level. Stop telling yourself that you are not good enough. Stop comparing yourself with others. Stop being afraid of making mistakes. Instead, open your heart to the possibility that you can transform your relationship with English in just 21 days. This journey we are starting together is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming confident, comfortable, and free to express yourself in this beautiful language that connects people from all over the world. Did you know that our brain needs only 21 days to create a new habit? This means that in 3 weeks, you can completely transform your relationship with English. Many people think they need years to feel confident, but the truth is that confidence comes from consistent practice, not from time. When you practice something every day for 21 days, your brain starts to accept this as normal, and speaking English stops being something scary to become something natural. Let me explain what happens in your brain during these 21 days. When you do something new, your brain creates new neural pathways. Think of it like walking through a forest for the first time. The first time you walk through, you need to push branches away, step over rocks, and find your way carefully. It feels difficult and slow, but if you walk the same path every day for 21 days, something amazing happens. The path becomes clear, smooth, and easy to walk on. Your brain works exactly the same way with language learning. During the first week, speaking English will still feel uncomfortable because your brain is creating those new pathways. You might feel frustrated, you might think it is too difficult, you might want to give up. This is completely normal, and it happens to everyone. Your brain is working hard to build new connections, and that takes energy. But something incredible happens around day 7. You start to notice that words come a little easier, that you do not have to think so hard about what you want to say. This is your brain starting to accept English as something familiar. In the second week, the magic really begins. Your brain starts to treat speaking English as a routine, not as a special event that requires all your mental energy. You will notice that you can speak for longer periods without getting as tired. You will start to enjoy the process more, because it does not feel like such hard work anymore. This is when many of my students tell me they had their first real conversation in English without planning every word in advance. By the third week, speaking English becomes something your brain expects to do every day. It is no longer a foreign activity that makes you nervous. Instead, it becomes part of your daily routine, just like brushing your teeth or having breakfast. This is when the real confidence starts to show up. You start to feel comfortable expressing your thoughts, even if you do not know all the perfect words. You start to realize that communication is more important than perfection. Scientists have studied this process for decades, and they have found that 21 days is the minimum time needed to form a new habit. But here is the key. It has to be consistent. You cannot practice for 3 hours one day, and then skip the next 5 days. Your brain needs regular, daily input to build those strong neural pathways. Even if you only practice for 5 or 10 minutes each day, this consistent daily practice is much more powerful than studying for hours once or twice a week. What I love about this 21-day approach is that it is based on how our brain naturally learns. We are not fighting against our brain. We are working with it. We are not trying to force ourselves to be perfect immediately. Instead, we are giving our brain the time and repetition it needs to make English feel natural and comfortable. This is why so many of my students see dramatic changes in their confidence after just 3 weeks of consistent practice. I want you to understand that this is not just theory. I have seen this transformation happen hundreds of times with students from all over the world. People who were terrified to speak English, who avoided any situation where they might need to use the language, who felt embarrassed about their accent or their mistakes. After 21 days of consistent practice, these same people were participating in meetings, making friends with English speakers, traveling with confidence, and expressing themselves naturally in English. The beautiful thing about 21 days is that it feels manageable. When someone tells you that you need to study English for years before you can speak confidently, it feels overwhelming and discouraging. But 21 days? That feels possible. You can commit to 21 days. You can see the end from the beginning. And when you reach day 21, you will be amazed at how different you feel about speaking English. The fear will still be there sometimes, but it will no longer control you. Instead, you will have the confidence to speak anyway, and that makes all the difference. Let me tell you about Maria, a young woman from Lisbon who got her dream job in London. She knew English on paper, but when it came time to speak, the words simply would not come out. On her first day at work, she could barely introduce herself in the meeting. Maria felt like everyone was judging her accent and her small mistakes. She came home frustrated, wondering if she would ever be able to communicate naturally in English. Maria had studied English for years in school and university. She could read complex texts. She understood movies without subtitles. She even passed all her English exams with excellent grades. But there was one problem that no textbook had prepared her for: the fear of speaking. When she walked into that London office on her first day, surrounded by native speakers talking fast and using expressions she had never heard before, she felt completely lost and terrified. During her first meeting, when her new boss asked her to introduce herself and talk about her background, Maria felt her heart racing. She had practiced this introduction many times at home. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. But when all those eyes were looking at her, waiting for her to speak, her mind went completely blank. She managed to say her name and where she was from, but then she stumbled over her words, mixed up her verb tenses, and spoke so quietly that people had to ask her to repeat herself. The worst part was not the mistakes she made, but the feeling that everyone in the room was thinking she was not qualified for the job. Maria started to believe that her colleagues were judging every word she said, counting her mistakes, thinking less of her because of her Portuguese accent. She began to avoid speaking in meetings. She would eat lunch alone instead of joining conversations with her coworkers, and she started to feel more and more isolated in her new workplace. Every evening, Maria would go home to her small London apartment feeling defeated. She would replay the conversations from the day in her mind, thinking about all the things she should have said differently, all the words she should have known, all the moments when she should have been more confident. She started to question whether moving to London was the right decision. Maybe she was not ready for an international career. Maybe her English would never be good enough for the business world. What made everything worse was that Maria knew she had good ideas to contribute at work. She understood the projects, she had valuable insights, she could solve problems that others could not see. But she felt trapped inside her own fear. The words were there in her mind, in Portuguese, but when she tried to translate them to English and say them out loud, something would block her. It was like having a beautiful song in your heart but being unable to sing it. Maria started to develop strategies to avoid speaking. She would arrive early to meetings to choose a seat where she was less likely to be called upon. She would prepare written notes for everything she wanted to say, but then she would be too nervous to read them aloud. She would volunteer for projects that required more writing and less speaking. She was essentially hiding her true self and her real capabilities because of her fear of speaking English. After 2 months in London, Maria realized that something had to change. She was living in one of the most exciting cities in the world, working for a company she had always dreamed of joining, but she was miserable because she could not express herself freely. She was watching her colleagues advance in their careers while she stayed quiet in the background. She knew that if she continued this way, she would never reach her full potential, and she would probably end up returning to Lisbon feeling like a failure. The turning point came during a team meeting when her boss presented a problem that Maria knew she could solve. She had the perfect solution. She had already worked on something similar in her previous job in Portugal, but she sat there in silence while her colleagues struggled to find an answer. After the meeting, Maria went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find a way to overcome her fear of speaking English, no matter what it took. She was tired of being a prisoner of her own thoughts, tired of letting fear control her life and her career. But Maria decided she was not going to give up. She started a 21-day journey focusing on only one thing: speaking English every day, even if it was just for 5 minutes. At the end of those 21 days, she was not only actively participating in meetings, but she had also made new friends at work. The secret was not studying more grammar, it was simply practicing speaking without fear of making mistakes. Maria began her transformation on a Sunday evening in her small London apartment. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror and made a promise to herself. For the next 21 days, she would speak English out loud every single day, no matter how scared she felt, no matter how many mistakes she made. She decided to start small and realistic. 5 minutes a day. That was all. Just 5 minutes of speaking English to herself about anything that came to mind. On day 1, Maria talked about her morning routine while getting ready for work. She described brushing her teeth, choosing her clothes, making coffee. Her voice was shaky, she paused constantly to find words, and she mixed Portuguese and English several times. But she did it. She spoke English for 5 minutes. On day 2, she talked about her lunch while eating it. She described the taste, the texture, where she bought it. It was still difficult, but slightly easier than the day before. By day 7, something interesting started happening. Maria noticed she was not translating from Portuguese in her head as much. The English words were starting to come more directly. She was still making mistakes, still feeling nervous, but the fear was less intense. She started enjoying these 5-minute sessions with herself. It became like having a conversation with a friend who would never judge her, never correct her, never make her feel stupid for not knowing a word. During the second week, Maria became more adventurous. She started talking about her feelings, her worries about work, her dreams for the future. She talked about missing her family in Lisbon, about the challenges of living in a new city, about her hopes for her career. These conversations with herself became therapeutic. She was not just practicing English, she was processing her emotions in a new language, which helped her feel more connected to English on a deeper level. The real breakthrough came on day 14. During a team meeting, when her boss asked for ideas about a new project, Maria felt the familiar fear rising in her chest. But this time, instead of staying silent, she remembered all those daily practice sessions in front of her mirror. She took a deep breath and raised her hand. Her voice was still nervous, she still made some mistakes, but she shared her idea. And something amazing happened. Her colleagues listened, they asked questions, they built on her suggestion. Her idea was actually used in the final project plan. That evening, Maria called her mother in Lisbon and told her about the meeting. For the first time since arriving in London, she felt proud of herself. She realized that her English did not need to be perfect for people to understand and value her ideas. Her colleagues were not judging her accent or counting her mistakes. They were listening to her thoughts, her contributions, her unique perspective. By the third week, Maria was speaking English for much longer than 5 minutes each day. The practice had become natural, enjoyable even. She started joining conversations during coffee breaks at work. She began asking questions during meetings instead of just listening. She even started making small talk with her neighbors in her apartment building. Each conversation was easier than the last. Each interaction built her confidence a little more. On day 21, Maria had a video call with her team in Portugal to update them on the London project. She spoke for 30 minutes straight, explaining complex ideas, answering questions, even making jokes that made her former colleagues laugh. After the call, she realized she had not thought about her accent once during the entire conversation. She had been focused on communicating her ideas, not on how she sounded while doing it. The transformation was remarkable, but Maria understood that it was not magic. It was the result of consistent daily practice, of pushing through the fear every single day, of speaking even when she did not feel ready. She had proven to herself that confidence in English was not about knowing every word or speaking without an accent. It was about being willing to communicate, to share her thoughts, to connect with people despite the imperfections in her language. Those 21 days had not made her English perfect, but they had made her brave, and that made all the difference in her life and career. In the first week, your goal is simple. Get your mouth and your mind used to producing English sounds every day. Start by talking to yourself about simple things in your day. Describe what you are doing while you do it. I am brushing my teeth, I am making coffee, I am leaving the house. It might seem silly, but you are training your brain to think in English naturally. Do not worry about perfection. Focus on consistency. Let me walk you through exactly what your first week should look like. When you wake up in the morning, before you even get out of bed, I want you to describe what you see around you. Look at your room and say simple things like, I see my window, I see sunlight coming in, I see my clothes on the chair. Your voice might sound strange to you at first. You might feel embarrassed talking to yourself, but remember that nobody is listening. This is your private practice time, your safe space to experiment with English sounds. As you get ready for your day, keep narrating your actions. When you brush your teeth, say, I am brushing my teeth. The toothpaste tastes fresh. I am looking at myself in the mirror. When you take a shower, describe the water temperature, how the soap feels, what shampoo you are using. I know this sounds very basic, but this is exactly what your brain needs. You are creating new pathways between your thoughts and English words. You are teaching your mouth to move in new ways to produce English sounds. During breakfast, talk about your food. Describe the taste, the texture, the temperature. Say things like this coffee is hot, this bread is soft. I like the taste of this fruit. Do not worry if you do not know the exact word for something. Use simple words that you do know. If you do not know how to say banana in English, just say yellow fruit. The goal is not to have perfect vocabulary. The goal is to keep your mouth moving and producing English sounds. On your way to work or school, describe what you see outside. Talk about the weather, the people walking by, the buildings, the cars. Say the sky is cloudy today, there are many people on the street. That building is very tall. You might feel self-conscious doing this on public transportation, so you can do it silently, just moving your lips without making sound. The important thing is that your brain is working in English, connecting thoughts to English words. During your lunch break, this is perfect practice time. Find a quiet place and talk about your food, your morning, your plans for the afternoon. Do not try to tell complex stories or use difficult words. Keep everything simple and basic. The more you practice with simple words and simple sentences, the more comfortable your brain becomes with English. Think of it like learning to walk. Before you can run, you need to take simple steps, one foot in front of the other. In the evening, when you are getting ready for bed, describe your day. Talk about what you did, how you felt, what you ate, who you talked to. Use past tense verbs even if you are not sure they are correct. Say things like, I worked today, I ate lunch with my friend, I walked home, I watched television. Do not stop to check every word in a dictionary. Do not worry if your sentences are perfect. The goal is fluency, not accuracy. You want your brain to get comfortable producing English sounds quickly and naturally. By day 3 or 4, you will notice something interesting happening. The English words will start coming a little faster. You will not have to think so hard about what you want to say. Your mouth will start to feel more comfortable making English sounds. This is your brain building those new pathways I talked about earlier. You are literally rewiring your brain to think in English instead of always translating from your native language. Some days will feel easier than others. On day 5, you might feel like you are making great progress. On day 6, you might feel frustrated and think you are not improving at all. This is completely normal and it happens to everyone. The important thing is to keep going. Even on the days when it feels difficult, even when you make lots of mistakes, even when you feel like giving up, keep talking to yourself in English for those 5 minutes. Consistency is more important than perfection. Your brain needs that daily input to build strong English pathways. Carlos lived in Madrid and always dreamed of traveling the world, but he had a terror of speaking English with foreigners. Every time he tried, he would freeze completely and go back to Spanish. During the first week of the 21-day method, Carlos started simple. He narrated his morning activities in English while getting ready for work. On the 7th day, he noticed that words were coming out more easily. Carlos worked as a graphic designer for a local company in Madrid, but his biggest dream was to work with international clients and travel to different countries for projects. He had studied English in school and could understand it quite well when reading or listening, but speaking was his nightmare. Whenever tourists approached him on the street asking for directions, Carlos would panic. He knew the words he wanted to say, but they would get stuck in his throat, and he would end up pointing and using gestures instead of speaking. The problem became even more frustrating when Carlos started following international design accounts on social media. He would see amazing projects from designers around the world. He would watch video tutorials in English, and he understood everything perfectly. But when it came to commenting on posts or participating in online discussions, he would write everything in Spanish and feel left out of the global design community. He knew that if he could overcome his fear of speaking English, his career opportunities would expand dramatically. Carlos decided to try the 21-day method after watching one of my videos. He was skeptical at first because he had tried many different approaches before, but nothing had worked. However, he was desperate enough to try anything. On his first Monday morning, Carlos set his alarm 10 minutes earlier than usual. When he woke up, instead of checking his phone immediately, he started describing his bedroom in English. "I see my computer on the desk. I see my design books on the shelf. I need to get up now." While brushing his teeth, Carlos looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and continued talking. "I am brushing my teeth. The toothbrush is blue. I need to shower now." His Spanish accent was very strong, and he made many mistakes, but he kept going. In the shower, he described the water temperature, the smell of his shampoo, how the soap felt on his skin. It felt awkward and unnatural, but he remembered that this was exactly how learning feels in the beginning. During breakfast, Carlos talked about his food and his plans for the day. "This coffee is very hot. I am eating toast with jam. I need to finish this project today." He noticed that he was automatically translating from Spanish in his head, but he did not stop to worry about it. He just kept talking, even when he could not find the right English word and had to use a Spanish word instead. The goal was to keep his mouth moving and producing sounds in English. On his way to work, Carlos continued his English narration while walking through the streets of Madrid. "I am walking to the metro station. There are many people today. The weather is sunny and warm." Other people on the street probably thought he was talking on the phone with earbuds, which made him feel less self-conscious about talking to himself in public. He described the buildings he passed, the shops he saw, the sounds of the city around him. By day 3, Carlos noticed something interesting. He was starting to think of some words directly in English without translating from Spanish first. Simple words like water, sun, street, work were coming naturally. He was still making lots of mistakes, still mixing languages sometimes, but the fear was beginning to decrease. The English sounds were starting to feel less foreign in his mouth. On day 5, Carlos had his first small breakthrough. While describing his morning routine, he suddenly realized he had been talking for almost 15 minutes without stopping. He had been so focused on describing his activities that he forgot to be nervous about speaking English. The words were flowing more naturally, even though they were still simple words and basic sentences. This gave him a boost of confidence that carried him through the rest of the week. Day 7 was the turning point for Carlos. As he was getting dressed for work, he started telling himself about a design project he was working on. Instead of just describing physical objects around him, he was expressing ideas and thoughts in English. "I think this logo needs more contrast. Maybe I should try a different color scheme. The client wants something modern but elegant." He realized that he was not just speaking English anymore. He was thinking in English about things that mattered to him professionally. That evening, Carlos felt proud of himself for the first time in years regarding his English-speaking ability. He had kept his commitment for 7 days straight, and he could already feel the difference. The words were coming more quickly. His mouth felt more comfortable making English sounds, and most importantly, the paralyzing fear was starting to fade. He was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, his dream of working internationally was not impossible after all. In the second week, you are going to take a step beyond. Now it is time to interact, even if it is just a little. Practice imaginary conversations with people you know. Imagine that you are telling a friend about your day, explaining a movie you watched, or describing your plans for the weekend. If you feel brave, record small videos of yourself speaking. You do not need to show them to anyone. It is just for you to hear your own voice and get used to it. The second week is where things start to get really interesting because your brain has already begun to accept English as something familiar from the first week. Now we are going to challenge you a little more, but in a safe and comfortable way. You are going to start having conversations, but these conversations are with imaginary people, so there is no pressure, no judgment, and no fear of making mistakes in front of others. Choose someone you feel comfortable with, maybe your best friend, your sister, your mother, or even a favorite celebrity. Now imagine that this person is sitting across from you, and you are going to tell them about your day in English. Start with simple things like, today I woke up early, I had coffee and toast for breakfast, I went to work by bus. But this time, instead of just describing facts, try to add your feelings and opinions. The coffee was delicious. The bus was very crowded. I felt tired this morning. When you practice these imaginary conversations, make them feel as real as possible. Look at an empty chair and pretend your friend is sitting there. Use gestures with your hands like you would in a real conversation. Change your voice tone when you ask questions or when you express excitement. This might feel silly at first, but it is incredibly powerful for your brain. You are training yourself to use English in social situations, which is exactly what you will need when you have real conversations later. Try different types of conversations throughout the week. On Monday, tell your imaginary friend about a movie you watched recently. Describe the story, the characters, whether you liked it or not, and why. Do not worry about complex movie vocabulary. Use simple words. The movie was about a man who travels to different countries. The story was interesting. I liked the main character because he was funny. On Tuesday, talk about your plans for the weekend. Maybe you want to visit a park, cook something special, or meet friends. Wednesday is perfect for describing your work or studies. Explain what you do, what projects you are working on, what challenges you face. Even if your job is complicated, use simple English to describe it. I work with computers, I help people solve problems, I have meetings with my team. Sometimes the work is difficult, but I enjoy it. The goal is not to use technical terms perfectly. The goal is to communicate your ideas clearly and naturally. By Thursday of the second week, you should start feeling more comfortable with these imaginary conversations. This is when I encourage you to try something a little more challenging. Record yourself speaking. Use your phone to make short videos, maybe 2 or 3 minutes long. You can delete them immediately after recording if you want, but the act of recording yourself speaking English is incredibly valuable. When you record yourself, you hear your voice from outside your head, which is different from how you hear yourself when speaking normally. At first, you might not like how you sound, you might think your accent is too strong, or you might notice mistakes you did not realize you were making. This is completely normal and happens to everyone. Even native speakers often do not like how they sound in recordings. The important thing is to focus on the positive aspects when you listen to your recordings. Notice how your pronunciation has improved since the first week. Pay attention to moments when you spoke fluently without hesitation. Celebrate the times when you found the right word quickly. Instead of criticizing yourself for mistakes, appreciate yourself for having the courage to speak English for several minutes without stopping. During the second week, you can also try having imaginary phone conversations. Pretend you are calling a friend who lives in another country, or imagine you are making a reservation at a restaurant or booking a hotel room. These scenarios prepare you for real-life situations where you might need to use English. Practice saying, hello, how are you? What time would you like the reservation? Thank you very much, goodbye. Another powerful exercise for week 2 is to explain things you are passionate about. If you love cooking, explain your favorite recipe to your imaginary friend. If you enjoy sports, describe a game you watched recently. If you like music, talk about your favorite songs and why you like them. When you talk about things you love, the words come more naturally because you are emotionally connected to the topic. By the end of the second week, you should notice that English is starting to feel less like a foreign language and more like a tool you can use to express yourself. You are no longer just describing what you see around you. You are sharing thoughts, feelings, opinions, and experiences. This is the foundation of real communication, and you are building this foundation in a safe, pressure-free environment where you can make mistakes without any consequences. In the second week, Carlos decided to be more daring. He started practicing imaginary conversations with coworkers in English. One day, an American tourist asked for directions on the street, and for the first time, Carlos did not run away from the conversation. He helped the tourist and walked away with a huge smile on his face. In that moment, he realized that the fear was decreasing and confidence was growing. Carlos began his second week feeling much more optimistic than he had expected. The first week had been challenging, but he could already feel a difference in how English sounded in his mouth. The words were not getting stuck as much, and he was not translating everything from Spanish before speaking. Now he was ready to take the next step and start having imaginary conversations with people from his daily life. He decided to practice conversations with his coworkers at the design agency. Every morning while getting ready for work, Carlos would imagine explaining his current projects to an international client. He would look at himself in the mirror and say things like, "We are working on a new logo for a restaurant. The client wants something modern and colorful. I think this design will work well for their brand." At first, these conversations felt forced and unnatural, but by day 10, he was speaking for 15 minutes straight without thinking about it. Carlos also started practicing phone conversations with imaginary clients from different countries. He would hold his phone and pretend to answer calls, saying, "Hello, this is Carlos from the design studio. How can I help you today?" He practiced explaining project timelines, discussing design concepts, and even handling difficult client requests. These role-playing exercises were preparing him for real situations he hoped to encounter in his international career. On day 12, something unexpected happened that would change everything for Carlos. He was walking to work through the busy streets near Plaza Mayor when an American tourist approached him with a map in his hands. The tourist looked confused and asked, "Excuse me, do you speak English? Can you help me find the Prado Museum?" In the past, Carlos would have immediately shaken his head and walked away quickly, pretending he did not understand. But this time was different. Something inside Carlos made him stop and take a deep breath. All those morning practice sessions, all those imaginary conversations, suddenly felt like they had been preparing him for this exact moment. Instead of running away, Carlos smiled and said, "Yes, I can help you." The words came out naturally, without the usual panic and hesitation that had plagued him for years. The tourist was so relieved and grateful. He explained that he had been walking in circles for 30 minutes trying to find the museum. Carlos realized he could understand everything the man was saying, and more importantly, he knew exactly how to help him. He pointed in the direction of the museum and said, "You need to walk straight for about 10 minutes. Then turn right at the big fountain. You will see the museum on your left side. It has a large entrance with many steps." The American tourist thanked Carlos repeatedly and asked if he was sure about the directions. Carlos found himself having a natural conversation, explaining that he worked nearby and walked past the museum every day. He even recommended a good restaurant near the Prado where the tourist could have lunch after his visit. The entire conversation lasted about 5 minutes, and Carlos felt like he was floating on air when it ended. As Carlos continued walking to work after helping the tourist, he could not stop smiling. He realized that everything had changed in that moment. He had just had his first real conversation with a native English speaker, and it had been successful. The tourist understood him perfectly, got the help he needed, and even seemed to enjoy talking with Carlos. There was no judgment about his accent, no frustration about his grammar, just two people communicating effectively in English. That evening, Carlos called his sister to tell her about his breakthrough. He was so excited that he could barely contain himself. He explained how the tourist had approached him, how instead of running away, he had decided to help, and how natural the conversation had felt. His sister was amazed because she knew how much Carlos had struggled with speaking English in the past. She could hear the confidence and excitement in his voice. Carlos realized that the imaginary conversations he had been practicing all week had given him the tools he needed for this real conversation. When the tourist asked for directions, Carlos did not have to think about how to structure his sentences or worry about finding the right words. The practice had made the language patterns familiar enough that he could focus on helping the person instead of worrying about his English. From that day forward, Carlos started looking for opportunities to use English instead of avoiding them. He began reading international design blogs and leaving comments in English. He joined online forums where designers from around the world shared their work. He even started planning a trip to London to visit design studios and galleries, something that would have been unthinkable just 2 weeks earlier. The transformation was remarkable, but Carlos understood that it was not magic. It was the result of consistent daily practice combined with the courage to step outside his comfort zone when the opportunity presented itself. He had proven to himself that his English was good enough to help someone, good enough to communicate effectively, good enough to make a real connection with another person. That realization changed everything about how he saw himself as an English speaker. The third week is where the magic happens. Now you are going to look for real opportunities to use your English. It could be commenting on social media posts in English, participating in online groups, or even trying a simple conversation with someone. The important thing is that you step out of your comfort zone gradually. Remember, you have already practiced for 2 weeks. Your confidence is already higher than when you started. Week 3 is the most exciting part of your 21-day journey because this is when you stop practicing in isolation and start connecting with the real world. After 2 weeks of talking to yourself and having imaginary conversations, your brain is ready for authentic interactions. The fear is still there, but it is much smaller now, and your confidence has grown strong enough to push through that fear when opportunities arise. Start small with online interactions because they feel less intimidating than face-to-face conversations. Find social media posts about topics you are interested in and leave simple comments in English. If you see a beautiful photo of food, write something like "This looks delicious. What ingredients did you use?" If someone shares a travel photo, comment "I would love to visit this place. It looks amazing." These short comments are perfect practice because they are low pressure, but real interactions with other people. Join online communities or forums related to your hobbies or interests. There are groups for everything: cooking, photography, movies, sports, books, travel, music. Find one that interests you and start by just reading what other people write. After a few days, when you feel comfortable, try posting a simple question or sharing your opinion about something. Remember, everyone in these communities is there because they share your interest, so they will be friendly and welcoming. If you work in an office or study at a school, look for opportunities to practice English with colleagues or classmates who are also learning the language. You can suggest practicing together, helping each other with pronunciation, or simply having short conversations during breaks. Many people are in the same situation as you, wanting to practice, but feeling nervous about making mistakes. When you find someone to practice with, you both benefit and feel more comfortable. Another great opportunity for week 3 is to interact with English-speaking content online. Watch videos on topics you enjoy and leave comments sharing your thoughts. Start following English-speaking influencers or experts in your field and engage with their content. Write questions, share your experiences, express your opinions. Most content creators love getting comments from international viewers and will often respond, giving you a real conversation opportunity. If you live in a city with tourists, week 3 is perfect for offering help when you see someone who looks lost or confused. You do not need to approach strangers actively, but if someone asks you for directions or recommendations, take a deep breath and help them. You have been preparing for these moments during your first 2 weeks of practice. Trust that you know enough English to be helpful, even if your sentences are simple. Consider visiting places in your city where English speakers might gather. International hostels, tourist information centers, museums with foreign visitors, or cafes in touristy areas. You do not need to start conversations, but simply being in environments where you hear English being spoken naturally helps your brain get used to the rhythm and flow of the language in real situations. Online language exchange platforms are perfect for week 3 because they connect you with people who want to practice languages. You can help someone learn your native language while they help you practice English. These conversations are structured for learning, so both people understand that mistakes are normal and expected. Start with short video calls, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and gradually increase the time as you become more comfortable. If you feel ready for a bigger challenge, try calling a business that serves international customers and ask a simple question in English. You could call a hotel to ask about their services, contact a tourism office for information, or inquire about a product at an international company. These calls are usually short and focused, which makes them less intimidating than long conversations. By day 18 or 19, you should start noticing that using English in real situations feels less scary and more exciting. Each successful interaction builds your confidence for the next one. You begin to realize that most people are patient and understanding when they know you are learning their language. They appreciate your effort and want to help you succeed. The most important thing to remember during week 3 is that perfection is not the goal. Communication is the goal. If someone understands what you are trying to say and you understand their response, the conversation is successful, regardless of any small mistakes you might make. Native speakers make mistakes too. They use simple words when they cannot think of complex ones, and they sometimes have to repeat themselves to be understood. Document your progress during this 3rd week by keeping a simple journal of your English interactions. Write down who you talked to, what you discussed, how you felt before and after the conversation. This record will show you how much you have grown and will motivate you to continue using English after your 21 days are complete. Each entry represents a victory, a moment when you chose courage over fear, communication over silence. Sophie, a designer from Paris, always wanted to expand her business internationally, but was afraid of presenting her work in English. During the 3rd week of the method, she decided to record a small video presenting her designs in English and post it on Instagram. The video had an incredible reception from international clients. Sophie realized that people were not judging her grammar, but rather admiring her work and her courage to communicate. Sophie had been running a small graphic design studio in Paris for 3 years, creating beautiful branding materials for local restaurants, boutiques, and small businesses. Her work was sophisticated and unique, combining classic French elegance with modern digital techniques. She dreamed of working with clients from around the world, especially companies in London, New York, and other international markets. But there was one major obstacle standing in her way: her fear of communicating in English. Sophie could read English design blogs and understand international design trends perfectly. She followed famous designers from different countries on social media and absorbed their techniques and ideas. But when it came to explaining her own work, presenting her concepts, or communicating with potential international clients, she felt paralyzed. She worried that her French accent was too strong, that her English vocabulary was not sophisticated enough for professional presentations, and that clients would judge her work based on how she spoke, rather than what she created. For months, Sophie had been receiving inquiries from potential international clients who found her work through Instagram and Pinterest. These were exactly the type of projects she dreamed of working on: luxury hotels in Dubai, fashion brands in Milan, tech startups in Berlin. But every time someone contacted her in English, she would either respond very briefly or refer them to competitors who could communicate more fluently. She was essentially giving away her dream projects because of her language fears. When Sophie started the 21-day method, she was skeptical that such a simple approach could solve her professional communication challenges. During the first 2 weeks, she practiced describing her design process, explaining her creative decisions, and presenting project concepts to imaginary clients. She would stand in her studio, looking at her computer screen, and narrate her design thinking process in English. This logo represents elegance and sophistication. I chose these colors because they create a warm and welcoming feeling. The typography is clean and modern, but still has personality. By the beginning of week 3, Sophie felt ready to take a bigger step. She had been working on a complete branding package for a fictional luxury perfume company, and she decided this would be her first English presentation to the world. Instead of just posting the final designs on Instagram like she usually did, she would record a video explaining her creative process, her inspiration, and the story behind the brand identity. Sophie spent an entire evening preparing for this video. She wrote down key points she wanted to cover, but she did not script every word because she wanted the presentation to feel natural and authentic. She practiced the presentation several times, recording herself on her phone and listening back to identify areas where she could improve her clarity and confidence. By midnight, she felt ready to record the final version. The next morning, Sophie set up her phone in her studio with good lighting and a clean background showing some of her design work. She took a deep breath and pressed record. Hello everyone, I am Sophie. I am a graphic designer from Paris, and today I want to share with you a brand identity project I created for a luxury perfume company. She spoke for almost 5 minutes, explaining her inspiration from Art Deco architecture, her choice of gold and deep blue colors, and how each element of the brand worked together to create a sense of timeless elegance. When Sophie finished recording, she felt incredibly proud of herself. She had just presented her work in English for 5 minutes straight, explaining complex creative concepts clearly and passionately. Her accent was definitely French. She made a few small mistakes, and some sentences were simpler than she would have liked, but she had communicated her ideas effectively and authentically. After reviewing the video one more time, she posted it on Instagram with the caption presenting my latest branding project for a luxury perfume brand. Hope you enjoy the creative process. The response was beyond anything Sophie had imagined. Within hours, the video had dozens of comments from designers, potential clients, and design enthusiasts from around the world. People were praising not just her design work, but also her clear explanation and professional presentation. Several comments specifically mentioned how much they appreciated hearing her creative process explained so thoughtfully. A luxury hotel chain from Switzerland sent her a direct message asking if she would be interested in redesigning their brand identity. What surprised Sophie most was that nobody commented on her accent or her grammar. The focus was entirely on her work, her ideas, and her professional expertise. She realized that she had been worried about the wrong things. International clients were not looking for perfect English pronunciation. They were looking for talented designers who could communicate their vision clearly and passionately. Her French accent actually added to her charm and authenticity, rather than detracting from her professionalism. Over the following weeks, Sophie received inquiries from potential clients in 6 different countries. She started having video calls with international prospects, and each conversation became easier and more natural than the last. She discovered that when she focused on her passion for design rather than her fear of making English mistakes, the language flowed much more naturally. Her confidence grew with each successful project presentation and client meeting. Sophie later told me that the moment she posted that first English video was the turning point in her career. It was not just about learning to speak English better. It was about finding the courage to share her authentic self with the world. She realized that her unique perspective as a French designer was actually an asset in the international market, and her willingness to communicate in English, even imperfectly, opened doors that had been closed for years. One of the biggest barriers to speaking English with confidence is wanting to be perfect. You need to understand that native English speakers also make mistakes, also search for words, also use simple expressions. Communication is about making yourself understood, not about being perfect. When you stop worrying so much about every word and focus on transmitting your message, your fluency improves naturally. Let me share something with you that might surprise you. Last week, I was having lunch with my friend who is a native English speaker from California. During our conversation, she said something like, "I went to the store yesterday and I bought some things for dinner, but I forgot what I was going to say." She paused, laughed at herself, and then continued with a completely different topic. This is a person who has been speaking English her entire life, and she still has moments where words do not come easily, where thoughts get mixed up, where sentences do not flow perfectly. This happens to everyone, in every language, all the time. Native speakers use simple words when they cannot think of complex ones. They repeat themselves when they want to make sure they are understood. They use gestures and facial expressions to help communicate their ideas. They say things like, "You know what I mean," or "How do you call it," when they cannot find the exact word they want. Perfect speech is not natural human communication. It is something that only exists in prepared presentations or carefully edited videos. The problem with perfectionism in language learning is that it creates a paralyzing fear of making mistakes. You become so focused on finding the perfect word, the perfect pronunciation, the perfect sentence structure, that you forget the most important thing: sharing your thoughts and connecting with another person. You end up saying nothing because you are afraid of saying something imperfect, but silence communicates nothing at all. I have worked with thousands of English learners over the years, and I can tell you that the students who improve fastest are not the ones who make the fewest mistakes. They are the ones who are willing to make mistakes, who focus on communicating their ideas even when their English is imperfect, who choose connection over perfection every single time. These students develop fluency quickly because they get lots of practice in real conversations, and real conversations are where language learning actually happens. Think about how you communicate in your native language. Do you always use perfect vocabulary? Do you never stumble over words or forget what you were going to say? Of course not. You use simple words, you repeat yourself sometimes, you gesture with your hands, you even make up words when you cannot think of the right one. And people understand you perfectly because communication is not about linguistic perfection. It is about sharing ideas, emotions, and experiences with other human beings. When you are learning English, your goal should not be to sound like a textbook or to speak like a news anchor. Your goal should be to communicate your thoughts clearly enough that other people can understand you and respond appropriately. If you can tell someone about your day and they understand what happened, that is successful communication. If you can ask for directions and get the help you need, that is successful communication. If you can express your opinion about a movie and have a conversation about it, that is successful communication. Perfectionism also creates unrealistic expectations about how language learning works. You expect to speak fluently from day one, to know every word you might need, to never make pronunciation mistakes. But language learning is a gradual process where you start with simple communication and slowly build complexity over time. A baby does not learn to speak by waiting until they can form perfect sentences. They start with single words, then simple phrases, then longer sentences, making thousands of mistakes along the way. I want you to think about some of the most successful international communicators you know. Maybe business leaders, actors, or public figures who speak English as a second language. Most of them have noticeable accents. They sometimes use simple vocabulary instead of complex terms, and they occasionally make small mistakes. But they are incredibly effective communicators because they focus on their message rather than their linguistic perfection. People listen to them because of what they have to say, not because of how perfectly they say it. The beautiful thing about focusing on communication instead of perfection is that it actually makes your English better faster. When you are relaxed and focused on sharing your ideas, words flow more naturally. When you are tense and worried about making mistakes, your brain gets stuck and language becomes much more difficult. Confidence and relaxation are essential for fluency, and perfectionism destroys both of these things. Starting today, I want you to change your definition of successful English communication. Instead of measuring success by how few mistakes you make, measure it by how well you connect with other people. Did you make someone laugh? Did you help someone solve a problem? Did you share an interesting story? Did you learn something new about another person? These are the real measures of communication success, and they have nothing to do with perfect vocabulary or flawless pronunciation. Remember that every native English speaker was once a child learning to speak, making countless mistakes, using simple words, and gradually building their language skills over many years. You are on the same journey, just starting at a different point in your life. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and focus on the joy of connecting with people from around the world through this beautiful language we call English. After following hundreds of people on this journey, I discovered that there are 3 essential elements for developing confidence in English. First, keep your sentences simple in the beginning. Second, practice every day, even if it is just a little. Third, be patient with yourself and celebrate each small victory. These 3 keys together create a solid foundation for your confidence to grow naturally. Let me explain why these 3 elements are so powerful and how they work together to transform your relationship with English. Over the years, I have noticed that students who embrace simplicity, consistency, and patience always succeed, while those who try to skip these foundations often struggle for much longer than necessary. Simplicity is your first key because it removes the overwhelming pressure of trying to express complex ideas before you have built a solid foundation. When you use simple sentences, simple vocabulary, and simple structures, you can focus on the most important thing: getting your message across clearly. Instead of trying to say, "I am extremely disappointed with the inadequate customer service I received at the restaurant," you can say, "I did not like the service at the restaurant." Both sentences communicate the same basic idea, but the simple version allows you to speak confidently, without worrying about complex vocabulary or sentence structures. Simple communication is not inferior communication. Some of the most powerful speakers in the world use remarkably simple language to convey profound ideas. They understand that clarity is more important than complexity, that being understood is more valuable than impressing people with fancy words. When you start with simple English, you build confidence in your ability to communicate, and this confidence becomes the foundation for more complex expression later. The second key is daily practice, even if it is just 5 or 10 minutes each day. This consistency is more powerful than studying for 3 hours once a week because your brain needs regular input to build strong neural pathways. Think of it like physical exercise. If you want to build muscle strength, you need to exercise regularly, not just intensively once in a while. Your brain works the same way with language learning. Daily practice keeps English active in your mind and makes it feel familiar and natural. What many people do not realize is that even 5 minutes of daily English practice creates momentum that carries through your entire day. When you start your morning by speaking English for 5 minutes, your brain stays partially activated in English mode. You might find yourself thinking in English occasionally throughout the day, or noticing English words and phrases in your environment. This extended activation multiplies the value of your practice time far beyond those 5 minutes. The third key is patience with yourself and celebrating small victories. Language learning is not linear. Some days you will feel like you are making great progress. Other days you will feel like you are moving backwards. This is completely normal and happens to everyone. On difficult days, patience means continuing to practice anyway, trusting that your brain is still building those neural pathways even when progress feels invisible. Celebrating small victories is equally important because it trains your brain to associate English with positive feelings instead of stress and frustration. When you successfully order coffee in English, celebrate that victory. When you understand a song lyric for the first time, acknowledge that progress. When you help a tourist with directions, recognize that achievement. These celebrations create positive emotional associations with English that make you want to practice more and take more risks with the language. These 3 keys work together in a powerful way. Simplicity makes daily practice possible because you do not need hours of preparation to speak simple English about your day. Daily practice builds the foundation that makes more complex communication possible over time. Patience and celebration keep you motivated during the inevitable ups and downs of the learning process. I have seen students transform their English confidence in just 21 days by focusing on these 3 elements. They start by describing their morning routine in simple sentences, practice for just 5 minutes each day, and celebrate the fact that they spoke English without translating every word from their native language. By week 3, they are having real conversations with confidence because they built their skills on this solid foundation. The mistake many people make is trying to skip the simple stage and jump directly to complex communication. They want to express sophisticated ideas, use advanced vocabulary, and speak without any accent from day one. This approach almost always leads to frustration and giving up, because it is like trying to run before you can walk. Master simple communication first, and complexity will develop naturally over time. Another common mistake is inconsistent practice. People practice intensively for a few days, then take a break for a week, then practice intensively again. This stop-and-start approach confuses your brain and makes progress much slower than necessary. Your brain needs consistent, regular input to build strong language patterns. 5 minutes every day is infinitely more valuable than 35 minutes once a week. The most important thing to remember is that these 3 keys require no special talent, no expensive courses, no perfect conditions. Anyone can speak simple English. Anyone can practice for 5 minutes a day. Anyone can be patient with themselves and celebrate small progress. These are choices you can make right now, today, that will start transforming your English confidence immediately. When you combine simplicity, daily practice, and patience, something magical happens. Your confidence grows gradually but steadily. Your English becomes more natural and flowing. And most importantly, you start enjoying the process of communicating in English instead of fearing it. This enjoyment is what sustains long-term progress and helps you continue improving for years to come. Andreas, an engineer from Berlin, needed to present projects to American clients via video conference. In the beginning, he read everything from a paper, and his presentation sounded robotic. Applying the 21-day method, he started practicing simple presentations alone, then recording himself, and finally presenting to colleagues. At the end of the 21 days, his first real presentation was a success, and he managed to close an important contract for his company. Andreas worked for a mid-sized engineering firm in Berlin that specialized in renewable energy solutions. His technical expertise was exceptional, and he had been with the company for over 5 years, steadily building a reputation as one of their most innovative problem solvers. However, the company was expanding internationally, and Andreas found himself in a challenging position. His boss had chosen him to lead presentations for potential American clients, but his English presentation skills were holding him back from reaching his full professional potential. The problem was not that Andreas did not know English. He could read technical documents, understand complex engineering concepts explained in English, and even write detailed project reports. But when it came to presenting his ideas verbally, especially in high-pressure situations with important clients watching, he would become incredibly nervous and rely heavily on written scripts. His presentation sounded stiff and unnatural, like he was reading from a textbook rather than sharing his genuine expertise and enthusiasm for the projects. Andreas had already experienced several disappointing video conferences with potential American clients. During these presentations, he would have every word written down in advance, and he would read directly from his notes while barely looking at the camera. His delivery was monotone and robotic, and he could see in the video chat that clients looked bored or distracted. Even worse, when clients asked questions or wanted clarifications, Andreas would panic because he had not prepared scripted answers for every possible question. After his most recent failed presentation, where a major client from California decided to work with a competitor instead, Andreas realized that something had to change. His technical knowledge was superior to many of his competitors. His project solutions were innovative and cost-effective, but his inability to communicate naturally in English was costing his company valuable contracts and limiting his own career advancement opportunities. When Andreas discovered the 21-day method, he was initially skeptical because it seemed too simple to solve his complex professional communication challenges. However, he was desperate enough to try anything, and he committed to following the program exactly as designed. During the first week, Andreas started by practicing describing his engineering projects in very simple terms, as if he were explaining them to a friend who knew nothing about renewable energy technology. Instead of using complex technical vocabulary, Andreas learned to break down his ideas into basic concepts that anyone could understand. For example, instead of saying we implemented a photovoltaic array optimization system with maximum PowerPoint tracking capabilities, he would practice saying we created a system that helps solar panels produce more electricity by finding the best working conditions. This simplification forced him to truly understand his projects at a fundamental level and helped him find natural ways to explain complex ideas. During the second week, Andreas began recording himself giving short presentations about different aspects of his work. He would set up his phone like a video conference call and practice presenting for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. At first, he still sounded somewhat stiff and formal, but gradually his voice became more natural and conversational. He started using gestures, varying his tone of voice, and making eye contact with the camera as if he were talking to a real person. The breakthrough came during the third week when Andreas decided to practice presenting to his German colleagues who also spoke English. He asked 3 coworkers to sit in a conference room while he presented a current project in English, and he requested honest feedback about his delivery and clarity. His colleagues were impressed by how much more natural and engaging he sounded compared to his previous presentations. They could follow his explanations easily, and they asked genuine questions that showed they were interested in the technical details. On day 20, Andreas felt ready for his first real presentation to American clients. The call was with a large renewable energy company in Texas that was considering a major project partnership. Andreas had prepared his key points, but instead of writing out every word, he had only bullet points to guide his presentation. When the video call began, he took a deep breath and started speaking naturally about the project, using the simple, clear communication style he had been practicing. The difference was remarkable. Andreas spoke with genuine enthusiasm about the technical solutions his team had developed. He used simple language to explain complex concepts, making it easy for the clients to understand the benefits of working with his company. When clients asked questions instead of panicking, Andreas was able to think on his feet and provide clear, helpful answers. He even found himself making small jokes and building rapport with the American team. The presentation was such a success that the Texas company decided to move forward with the partnership immediately. They commented specifically on how clearly Andreas had explained the technical aspects and how confident and knowledgeable he appeared on the video call. The contract was worth over 2 million euros for Andreas' company, making it one of their largest international deals ever. More importantly for Andreas personally, this success completely transformed his relationship with English presentations. He realized that his technical expertise was actually enhanced by clear, simple communication rather than diminished by it. Clients were not impressed by complex vocabulary and formal presentations. They were impressed by engineers who could explain their solutions in ways that made business sense. Andreas went on to lead several more successful international presentations, and within 6 months he was promoted to head of international business development. He later told me that those 21 days of practice had not just improved his English, they had taught him to be a better communicator in general, even when presenting in German to domestic clients. Many people worry too much about their accent, but I am going to tell you a secret. Your accent is your identity, not a problem to solve. The world is full of people who speak English with different accents, and that is beautiful. What matters is that you are understood, not that you sound like a native speaker. Work on the clarity of your speech, not on eliminating your accent. I want you to think about some of the most successful and respected English speakers in the world today. There is the former Secretary General of the United Nations from South Korea, technology leaders from India, business executives from Germany, scientists from Japan, artists from France, and politicians from dozens of different countries. All of these people speak English with their natural accents, and nobody questions their intelligence, expertise, or ability to communicate effectively. Their accents are part of what makes them unique and memorable. Your accent tells a story about who you are and where you come from. When I hear someone speaking English with a Spanish accent, I immediately know something interesting about their background and their journey with languages. When I hear a French accent, I think of elegance and sophistication. When I hear a German accent, I think of precision and reliability. These associations are positive, not negative. Your accent is part of your personal brand, part of what makes you distinctive in a world full of English speakers. The obsession with sounding like a native speaker is actually counterproductive for most learners because it creates an impossible goal that leads to frustration and self-consciousness. There are many different native English accents. Should you try to sound like someone from London, New York, Australia, or South Africa? Even within the same country, there are dozens of regional accents. Native speakers from different regions sometimes have difficulty understanding each other, but they still communicate effectively because they focus on clarity and meaning rather than accent perfection. What really matters for effective communication is not having a perfect accent, but being clearly understood. This means pronouncing words in a way that others can recognize them, speaking at an appropriate speed, and using good intonation patterns that help convey your meaning. You can achieve all of these things while maintaining your natural accent. In fact, trying too hard to eliminate your accent often makes your speech sound forced and unnatural, which actually makes you harder to understand. I have noticed that students who accept and embrace their accents tend to become more confident and fluent speakers much faster than those who fight against their natural speech patterns. When you stop worrying about sounding perfectly American or British, you can focus your mental energy on expressing your ideas clearly and connecting with other people. This shift in focus leads to much more natural and effective communication. Think about actors, musicians, and public figures who speak English as a second language. Many of them have strong accents, but they are incredibly successful communicators because they speak with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. Their accents do not hold them back. They actually make them more interesting and memorable. People remember them not in spite of their accents, but partly because of the unique way they express themselves. There is also a practical consideration here. Trying to completely eliminate your accent requires years of intensive training and practice. And even then, most people never achieve a completely native-sounding accent. This time and energy could be much better spent on expanding your vocabulary, improving your listening skills, building confidence in conversations, and learning to express complex ideas clearly. These skills will have a much bigger impact on your communication effectiveness than accent modification. I want to share something that might surprise you. Many native English speakers actually find accents charming and interesting. When I travel to different countries and hear locals speaking English with their natural accents, I find it delightful and engaging. It adds personality and character to conversations. Your accent is not a barrier to communication. It is part of what makes interacting with you a unique and enjoyable experience. The key is to focus on clarity rather than accent elimination. Make sure you pronounce words clearly enough that others can understand them. Pay attention to the rhythm and intonation of English, which helps convey meaning and emotion. Practice speaking at a comfortable pace that allows listeners to follow your ideas. These improvements will make you a much more effective communicator without requiring you to abandon your natural accent. I also want you to consider the diversity of English as a global language. English is spoken by more non-native speakers than native speakers around the world. It has become the international language of business, science, technology, and culture, precisely because people from different backgrounds can use it to communicate effectively while maintaining their own linguistic identities. Your accented English is part of this beautiful global tapestry of communication. Instead of seeing your accent as something to hide or fix, see it as something to be proud of. It represents your linguistic journey, your cultural background, and your ability to communicate across language barriers. When you speak English with your natural accent, you are demonstrating courage, adaptability, and intelligence. These are qualities to celebrate, not to diminish by trying to sound like someone else. Focus your practice time on building vocabulary, improving listening comprehension, developing confidence in conversations, and learning to express your thoughts clearly and persuasively. These skills will serve you much better than spending countless hours trying to change how you sound. Remember, the goal of learning English is not to become a different person. It is to become a more connected and effective version of yourself. Now, we are going to create your personalized plan. First, choose a fixed time of day for your practice. It can be in the morning, at lunchtime, or before going to sleep. Second, define what you are going to talk about each day. Monday about work, Tuesday about hobbies, Wednesday about family, and so on. Third, choose an imaginary person you are going to talk to. It can be a friend, a colleague, or even a celebrity. This makes the practice more natural and fun. Creating a personalized 21-day plan is essential because it removes the guesswork from your daily practice and makes it much more likely that you will stick to your commitment. When you have a clear structure to follow, you do not waste time deciding what to practice each day, and you do not have excuses for skipping your practice sessions. Your plan becomes a roadmap that guides you from where you are now to where you want to be in 3 weeks. Let me walk you through each element of your plan in detail so you can customize it perfectly for your lifestyle and preferences. The first decision is choosing your practice time, and this choice can make or break your success. You need to pick a time when you can be consistent every single day, including weekends. Look at your daily routine and find a 5 to 10 minute window that is relatively free from distractions and interruptions. Morning practice works well for many people because your mind is fresh and you have not yet encountered the stress and fatigue of the day. You could practice while having your morning coffee, while getting ready for work, or during your commute if you use public transportation. The advantage of morning practice is that you start your day with a sense of accomplishment, and your brain stays partially activated in English mode throughout the day. Lunchtime practice can be ideal for people who have busy mornings and evenings. You can find a quiet place during your lunch break, maybe in a park, in your car, or in an empty conference room at work. This timing helps break up your day and gives you an energizing activity in the middle of your work schedule. It also means you have already completed your English practice before evening fatigue sets in. Evening practice works for people who prefer to wind down with learning activities or who have more time and mental energy after work. You could practice while preparing dinner, during your evening walk, or before going to bed. The advantage of evening practice is that you can often spend a little more time if you are feeling motivated, and you end your day with a positive learning experience. Once you have chosen your time, you need to create topics for each day of the week. Having predetermined topics eliminates the daily decision of what to talk about and ensures you practice speaking about different areas of your life. Monday could be about your work or studies, describing your projects, your colleagues, your challenges, and your goals. Tuesday might focus on your hobbies and interests, talking about activities you enjoy, things you want to learn, or experiences you have had. Wednesday can be family day, where you talk about your relatives, share memories, describe family events, or express your feelings about family relationships. Thursday could be about your health and daily routines, describing your exercise habits, your eating patterns, your sleep schedule, or your wellness goals. Friday might be about entertainment, discussing movies you have watched, books you have read, music you enjoy, or places you want to visit. Saturday can be about your dreams and future plans, talking about your career goals, travel aspirations, personal development objectives, or things you want to achieve in the coming months. Sunday could be reflection day, where you look back on your week, discuss what you learned, share your feelings about recent experiences, or talk about things you are grateful for. The third element of your plan is choosing an imaginary conversation partner. This person should be someone you feel comfortable with, someone who would not judge you for making mistakes, someone who would be interested in hearing about your life and thoughts. It could be your best friend from childhood, a family member you trust, a mentor you admire, or even a celebrity you find inspiring and approachable. Having a specific person in mind makes your practice feel more like real conversation and less like academic exercise. When you imagine talking to your best friend about your work, You naturally use a more conversational tone, more personal examples, and more emotional expression. This helps you develop the natural speaking patterns that you will need in real conversations with English speakers. You can even change your imaginary conversation partner based on the topic. On work days, you might imagine talking to a professional mentor or colleague. On family days, you might imagine talking to a close relative. On hobby days, you might imagine talking to someone who shares your interests. This variety keeps your practice sessions fresh and engaging while helping you practice adjusting your communication style for different audiences. Remember to write down your plan and put it somewhere you will see it every day. Include your chosen practice time, your daily topics, and your imaginary conversation partners. Having a written plan makes your commitment feel more real and official. It also serves as a reminder on days when you might be tempted to skip your practice session. Your plan should be realistic and sustainable for your lifestyle. If you can only commit to 5 minutes a day, that is perfectly fine. If you have more time some days and less time on others, build that flexibility into your plan. The most important thing is consistency, not duration. 5 minutes every day for 21 days is infinitely more valuable than 30 minutes once or twice a week. We have reached the end of our episode, and I hope you have felt that speaking English with confidence in 21 days is totally possible. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and your first step starts today. If this episode inspired you, leave a comment telling us what will be your first step in this 21-day journey. Share this episode with someone who also needs this motivation, and do not forget to subscribe to the English Talk community to continue receiving content that will transform your English. I am Julia, and we will see each other in the next episode. As we close this conversation today, I want you to take a moment to really feel the possibility that exists in front of you right now. 21 days ago, Maria was terrified to speak in meetings in London. Carlos was avoiding tourists on the streets of Madrid. Sophie was turning away international clients in Paris. Andreas was losing important business deals because of robotic presentations. All of these people had the same fears you might be feeling right now, the same doubts about their ability to communicate confidently in English. But here is what they discovered, and what I want you to understand deeply. The transformation you seek is not about becoming a different person or achieving perfection in English. It is about finding the courage to use the English you already know, to communicate your ideas even when your sentences are simple, to connect with other people even when you make mistakes. The confidence you need already exists inside you. It just needs 21 days of consistent practice to emerge. Your journey starts with a single decision, a commitment you make to yourself right now in this moment. You are going to speak English for 5 minutes every day for the next 21 days. You are going to choose simplicity over complexity, consistency over perfection, courage over fear. You are going to trust that your brain knows how to learn, that your confidence will grow naturally through practice, and that communication is more important than linguistic perfection. I want you to imagine yourself 3 weeks from now. You are having a conversation in English, and instead of feeling nervous and self-conscious, you feel excited and engaged. You are sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your personality through this beautiful language that connects people from all over the world. You are not speaking perfect English, but you are speaking confident English, and that makes all the difference in how you feel about yourself and how others perceive you. The stories I shared with you today are not exceptions. They are examples of what happens when ordinary people commit to extraordinary consistency. Maria, Carlos, Sophie, and Andreas all started exactly where you are starting today. They had the same fears, the same doubts, the same language barriers. What made them successful was not special talent or perfect conditions. It was the decision to practice every day regardless of how they felt, regardless of how many mistakes they made, regardless of how slowly progress seemed to come. Your English learning journey does not end after 21 days, of course. Those 3 weeks are just the foundation, the confidence-building phase that prepares you for years of continued growth and improvement. But what you accomplish in those 21 days will change your entire relationship with English forever. You will prove to yourself that you can speak English confidently, that people can understand you and connect with you, that your accent and your mistakes do not prevent effective communication. After your 21 days are complete, you will find that opportunities to use English start appearing everywhere in your life. You will notice English conversations happening around you that you want to join. You will see online communities discussing topics you care about. You will encounter situations where you can help others or share your expertise in English. Instead of avoiding these opportunities, you will embrace them because you will have the confidence foundation that makes taking risks feel exciting rather than terrifying. This is why I created the English Talk community, to support people like you who are ready to transform their relationship with English through practical, achievable methods that focus on building confidence rather than pursuing perfection. Every week, I share new strategies, success stories, and encouragement for learners at every stage of their journey. You are not alone in this process. You are part of a global community of people who believe that anyone can learn to communicate confidently in English. The most important thing you can do right now is start. Do not wait until you feel ready. Do not wait until you have more time. Do not wait until you know more vocabulary. Take out your phone, find a quiet place, and spend 5 minutes talking to yourself in English about your day. It might feel awkward, it might feel silly, but it is the first step in a journey that will change your life in ways you cannot imagine yet. Your confident English-speaking self is waiting just 21 days away.